this computer. All right. And, right, I'm setting it up. Just a couple of seconds.
We are live on Facebook.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today to another exciting Smart Dialogue Series session. We have with us here Ratna Arianti. And Ratna is a first-year PhD student in the School of Journalism at the Scripps College of Communication. The title of her presentation today is, I'm just going to make sure that I say that right, is Press Freedom and Fact Checking, Content Analysis of Fact Checking Articles in a free country versus a less free country. That sounds very interesting. So I'm not going to hold you back and let you go ahead and present. So over to you, Ratna.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. I would also like to say thank you to Ganem. I know that arranging the event in working remotely is not easy. So I really appreciate Dr. Khan and Ganem's work since the very beginning. So I'm going to share my screen. Does everyone can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yes, my name is Ratna Arianti. I'm a first-year PhD student at the School of Journalism. I'm originally coming from Indonesia, and I did my master ages ago in the University of Leeds in the UK. I took international journalism, but I spent most of my time, I think all of my time after I finished my undergrad as a full-time journalist. So in terms of being a scholar is still new for me. I do hope that I will get input and feedback from all of you, because the study that I will present now is an ongoing study. So I will talk about press freedom and fact checking. My talk today will begin with summarize of the study. I will talk about the background and what method that I use and findings that I found during the study And the second part will talk about my future plan. I will try to add more in the study to enhance the study before I submit my study to the journal. And then we will end up by having Q&A and also input and feedback from all of you. So I'm going to start by talking about the press freedom. So as we know, press freedom is very fundamental a fundamental element in the society. It is one of the pillars to support democracy and providing venues for different ideas and thoughts. Having press freedom means that the society is not only getting information from one side, mainly the government or authorities. We have seen this happening in a number of countries like China or Vietnam in Asia. And also it used to be also happening in my own country in Indonesia in 1998 before we have reformation at the time, where the government control all the flow of the information. I think it's very crucial to maintain press freedom, and I believe that everyone agree on this part, especially during this global health crisis, where we have seen numerous claims, misinformation, and disinformation regarding the COVID-19, especially during the beginning of the pandemic, where even the medical workers and also health workers, they don't really have the information on what is going on. How do we tackle this? What is the best, like prevention? And then we know that WHO also updating the information, and people seems confused, and they actually and in this in this time we do really need the the journalists who can verify the information. So basically, journalists are the frontliners to inform the public, to give the verification, to verify the information, changing their opinions, especially in nowadays where we also dealing with the vaccine, like making sure that this is safe and people will go to the health center and register themselves to get the vaccine. But we know that press freedom is not, we cannot just take for granted. In several areas, there are actually threats to press freedom. Like in South Asia, for instance, Bangladesh and Afghanistan are being considered as two places where dangerous places to for the journalists to work, because lately, for instance, female journalists working in the broadcasting company in Afghanistan, and they killed those female journalists and also media workers. So threats to press freedom are actually happening, even in some developed countries where where they have been known as the fighter of the press freedom. But we know that in the US, for instance, journalists get arrested where they cover the protests, and also in others developed countries as well. Some organizations have paid attention to this to tracking of press freedom. These three organizations that you see on the screen, Freedom House, Reporter Without Borders, and International Federation of Journalists, are the three, and also other organizations like CPG. They are actively monitoring and protecting the press freedom. I used to work at the International Federation of Journalists, IFJ, in between my when I ended up my career as a full-time journalist 2 years ago, and I'm waiting for the application of my PhD. I joined with IFJ as a Southeast Asia coordinator, and my role at the time is to monitor the press freedom in Southeast Asia. So when we talk about the press freedom, we also need to mention about the division of the press freedom, which was being introduced by Siebert, Peterson, and Scrum in 1956. They argue that press freedom is not an autonomous system, but is a part of other systems such as political, social, and cultural. They divided 4 theories of the press, which are authoritarian, libertarian, social responsibility, and Soviet communist. So authoritarian is a system to describe for press which is under the control of the government authorities. I mentioned earlier about China and also Vietnam, where they don't have any space for independent media. In contrast with the authoritarian is libertarian theory, which is supported the freedom of individuals, free thoughts, and free from government controls. And the third one is social responsibility theory, which is a modification of libertarian theory by allowing the free press and against any form of censorship, but also allow the idea of mediated journalism and public interference. Lastly, the Soviet communist theory. It is a modification of authoritarian theory where the party is the one holding the control. So we know that the press freedom allowing journalists and also media outlets to mainly to verify information. So they publish and produce only the true factual information. They don't actually becoming an agent to spreading false claim or unverified information. When we talk about the fact checking, it's it's also essential to mention PolitiFact because this is actually where the fact checking began, where the PolitiFact, an independent fact checking website, was being established in 2007, and they were heavily involved in fact checking the U.S. elections in 2008. So basically, it's coming from the politics side. But we have seen numerous fact-checking outlets nowadays. They also involve in different topics, so it's no longer mainly in politics. So the needs to fact check also like supporting the development of the fact-checking outlets, not only in the developed countries, but also in the global south, including in Asia Pacific. So over the years, the industry has been significant global growth. One of the study conducted by the Duke Reporters Lab saying that there were 188 fact-checking outlets in more than 60 countries in 2019. It shows an increase of more than 4 times from only 44 fact-checking outlets in 2014. So Duke Reporters Lab is consistently monitoring the establishment of the fact-checking by producing global database and map. I thought earlier that we owe the fact-checking teams to verify the accuracy of mis and disinformation, especially during the pandemic. And the development of fact-checking in different countries, it depends on mainly of the 2 factors. So one is the degree of democratic governance. So when there is a democratic governance where they also support the press freedom, so it's not an authoritarian type, we will see that it is also supporting the emergence of fact-checking outlets. And the second one, also very important, the accessibility to the internet, because people mainly consume this from their device. And also the fact-checking teams, when they debunk the information, they also need the help of digital device. I'm interested to see the press freedom and fact-checking correlation personally, because when I was still in Indonesia and I work as a full-time journalist, I joined with the Alliance of Independent Journalists, or AJI, we call it in Bahasa Indonesia. So AJI Indonesia initiated a fact-checking network called Cek Fakta. So it consisting of national media and also local media. Now we do have more than dozens newsrooms joining with the initiative. The last time we had 25, and the number is still growing, especially because the needs and the demands from local outlets are very high. And then one of the things that we did is we did the live fact checking of presidential debate for the presidential election. And then before I went to the US, so I spent my first semester online. So I helped them to also do the fact checking for local election. So we did have local election in December 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And then we did also fact checking for local election, which was being run in more than 200 cities. The fact checker and also fact checking outlets also receive threats and intimidation. This is happening in several countries in Asia. In the Philippines, so the fact checkers was being doxxed, so their personal opinion and the personal information were being spread online, and also intimidation. I believe more studies are needed to see the correlation between the press freedom and the fact checking, because now there are actually studies, but mainly covering Western countries. So my research questions on this study is there any correlation between the press freedom with the amount of work done by journalists to produce fact-checking articles? As a study, as an entrance, I choose the COVID-19 as an angle. And then the second one is, what are the differences of the fact-checking articles in a country with high-ranking press freedom with the lower one? So the differences can be ranged from topic, origin of this information, whether it's coming from officials, government, or like disinformation or misinformation website, social media, for instance, or whether there's also possibility that media outlets are the one who's spreading the claims or false claims. And then I also I also wanted to know what kind of sources that the journalists use to debunk. Whom sources did they contact when they tried to verify the information, and what kind of frame that the media outlets use, whether it's domestic or claims that spread outside their country. So I'm gathering the data from Coronavirus Facts Alliance database by Pointer. I'm very passionate about the idea of collaboration. So this one is a collaboration, global collaboration between newsrooms. So I took the articles from here, but I also double checked from their own website. As a free country, I choose Australia. And the less free country is the Philippines as a start. I use Freedom in the World Index from the Freedom House to determine whether this country considered as a free country or less free country. And in Australia, there are 2 fact-checking outlets joining the Coronavirus Fact Alliance database. And in the Philippines, we have 3 media outlets. So Verifiles is a very interesting fact-checking outlet. So it's purely doing the fact-checking. I'm using the content analysis, and I was getting help from 2 coders. They are 2 students studying journalism, but not only studying the journalism, but also taking course of digital fact-checking, which was being offered in my home-based university, Multimedia Nusantara University. We started to offer digital fact-checking courses for undergrad student starting probably 3 years ago. So they are very familiar about how do the fact checkers work, what kind of source and tools that they can use when they try to verify information. Even some of them had an opportunity to had an intern with the fact-checking team in several media outlets in Indonesia. So the 2 coders helped me, and then I count the intercoder reliability before we started with the analysis. So my findings is, I'm assuming that because if you are in the country where a free country, you don't have any the threat is not really high. and the government is not really monitoring your work, probably it's easier for you to do the fact checking. I know Australia is a free country, but it also has a slightly problem a couple years ago when the police raid journalists. But when you see when you compare with other Asia Pacific country, Australia is still being considered as a free country. But apparently the finding showing that Philippines produce more fact-checking articles, but we also need to I also need to be very cautious because the number of the media outlets doing the fact-checking is also higher in the Philippines. So Australia produced 62 and the Philippines produced 182 articles in total in the time frame of my early study. And regarding the frame, domestic and foreign, Australia media outlets in Australia are more focused heavily in claims spreading in outside their country, while journalists in the Philippines focus more in the claims that spreading within the country or inside the country. And so the rating was being introduced first time by PolitiFact as well, where you can see like whether the claim is misleading, partly false, or false. So so for the false, for instance, where Philippine saying that Philippine government saying that they will distribute social aid for the citizens, but basically it wasn't correct. And partially false, for instance, where there is a claim about master degree master degree graduate in China, and then he warned everyone about the treatment and the symptoms of the virus. Some are false, but some are true, so it can be categorized in partly false. So we can see that rating in the Australia and also Philippines are dominated by false claims. When it comes to origin, this is very interesting. You can see like in Australia, there were no claims coming from this or misinformation website. There is no from instant messaging, there is no from official sources, but purely from social media. But in the Philippines, you can see like social media is still dominated, but they also have slight percentage coming from instant messaging. They have Fiber, so it's very popular in Philippines, also WhatsApp. And people also create disinformation and misinformation website. One of them called City News, where it produce, like false claim on not on a daily basis, but on a regular basis. And official sources. So President Duterte is one of the source of the false claim. So, for instance, he mentioned that Philippines is the first country in Asia implementing lockdown. Is basically not true because in Asia, Vietnam is considered as the first one of the first countries that limit or restrict the number of travelers go into the country. So it's not it wasn't Philippines. And also President Duterte said that Philippines is one of the first country that considering coronavirus as a serious threat. And also, it wasn't true, because in the beginning of when the virus was getting spread, and like some countries starting to have serious strategies to tackle this pandemic. President Duterte had a talk with the journalists, and then he was very arrogant at that time. He said like this, where is the coronavirus? I tried to looking for it. Don't worry, we can defeat it. So he's trying to like making people calm, but at the same time, he didn't also taking a serious measurement to protect the country. So in terms of the hospital capacity, for instance, or the like the availability of the personal protective equipment, Philippines was lagging behind on all of those. This is one of the things that the President Duterte said when he claimed that Philippines was the first to impose COVID lockdown in Asia. But it's not, it wasn't true. When it comes to sources used by journalists, we see in Australia and also in the Philippines, government official and health authorities, usually health authorities, are the one that they refer when the journalists try to debunk the information. The second one for the Philippines and Australia is Media and Fact Checker Institution. I assume this is happening because they are becoming a part of the alliance, where they can easily see what other colleagues in the different part of the world or different countries already produce a fact checking, and they can refer to that result, and that they can mention or cite it and then publish the debunk in their own website. So this is very useful, especially when it comes to the journalists and to the media outlets where they have a very few journalists to do the fact checking. Also, we see academicians and journal articles and medical experts are also being referred by the journalists when they try to verify information. In terms of the category, we see that medicine and medical issues are the highest category of the false claims that spread, especially during the pandemic. Probably when I later in the future, when I expand the time frame, vaccine will be also one of the things that people talk about it. So I'm still, like I said earlier, so most of my career I spent as a full-time journalist. Even after I finished my master degree, I didn't continue doing the research. I mean, like, I'm not having a wide variety in terms of the methodology. I did several studies about the press freedom, but not mostly, all of it are qualitative ones. So I'm very comfortable doing interview, but number is my biggest weakness. I try to avoid having my master degree in the US before, but I think like now I don't have any option, and I'm happy to be here. But when I remember the GRA test, oh my God, I don't want to go back to that phase again. I tell it many times that I took 2 times for the GRE, and for the second one, I almost passed out. I think I never feel hungry as I felt when I finished my second GRE test. I'm not saying that my verbal was good, but at least I can manage to, go through all of that. But algebra and math are my biggest concern. So statistic is not really my cup of tea, but I know that I need to catch up with this. So I have a plan to do this in my summer course. Hopefully I will be I will conquer my fear, because I know that in terms of reliability, we need to also, I did a bit, but I need to strengthen my statistic to be able to, so that my finding will be reliable. And I will add more countries. I'm fluent in Bahasa Indonesia, and one of the outlet in Indonesia is also joining with this alliance. So Indonesia is one of the country that will be at in this study. I'm in talk with a colleague in Myanmar, because apparently the outlet that joining with the alliance is the one that published it in Burmese, and I'm not speaking Burmese, so I will also ask a coder from Myanmar to help me to do the coding, and also several countries in Asia where they have a higher press freedom index beside Australia. And it's also probably interesting to also add more countries in different continents in western part of the world. I mean, US is one of them, and also media outlets in Europe, where also they have a different type of the press freedom. So I will add more countries and continents in the study, and I will expand the time frame. So 4 months very short. Hopefully I will be able to do at least a year. And also comparing within countries. It's also probably interesting to see, like the correlation between variable. Like for instance, the claims coming from the government, whether those claims, majority of those claims are false or misleading or like partly false, or seeing the categories and what kind of source that the journalists use when they try to debunk certain categories. So I also think about it as well. And then hopefully at the end, I need to publish something and I will send it, and then gaining knowledge from reviewer too. If you don't know, there is a Facebook group in Facebook for sure, that it says reviewer two must be stopped. It's very helpful for me as a new scholar, because I can, know and see the challenges that other scholars face when they try to finish their study. If you never see the Facebook page, I recommend you to see, because it's very funny. They're trying to normalize the, like this, the, what do you call, the challenge journey before they were being able to publish the research. So I think that's it. Hopefully you'll be able to understand my accent. So I'm happy to see, I'm happy to hear the inputs and questions. Thank you, Dr. Khan.
Sorry to interrupt, Ratna. It was wonderful, very clear, loud. We understood you loud and clear. So no problems whatsoever. Before we move ahead, I just wanted to, again, thank you, but also apologize. I forgot to read out your bio. So those of you who joined late,
No, it's okay.
and quite a few people joined us at the later stage, I just wanted to let you know Ratna has been very humble in introducing herself. She is not only a wonderful scholar in the School of Journalism here at Ohio University, but she has a stellar record. And I'm not kidding. She is a wonderful record working as a full-time journalist in Jakarta, Indonesia. And the study that she just presented becomes all the more important because you're hearing firsthand from somebody who has been working with the International Federation of Journalists, or IFJ, to monitor press freedom in Southeast Asia. So who better to hear about this than Ratna? Just to add to that, she also had this degree in international journalism from the University of Leeds in the UK. And she has varied interests. What I've done is posted her bio and the study information on Facebook on our page, as well as I'll be posting it on YouTube so you can see that. And hopefully on Twitter, Gandham, you can do that. So thank you again. And now the floor is open for questions.
Or feedback.
Can I go first? I had a question.
Please.
So you did mention in your methods that you did a content analysis from data that was, I believe, from 2 or 3 organizations. Is that right?
5 in total.
5 organizations. So how did those organizations gather that data? Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah, okay. So like I mentioned earlier, so this initiative was being arranged by Pointer. So the network of the fact checkers, a global network of the fact checkers, they can join with this initiative. And then once usually the members are the one who produce fact checking articles regularly. Some has their own fact checking team, like AFP fact checking. So usually they assign particular journalists to do the fact checking on day-to-day basis. In Australia, AFP Australia doing fact checking every day. And in the Philippines, there are Rappler, Verifiles, and AFP fact checking. So Rappler, they do also have the specific assigned team where they also do fact checking. So they don't do, like regular stories. They only do the fact checking. And the Verifiles, Verifiles has been considered as one of the example of fact checking outlets in Asia, where since the first time they established, they only do the fact checking. So it's also was being established by veteran journalists, journalists who are already in the field for dozen years, and then they join to announce Verifiles. So since the very beginning, it's only doing the fact checking because the needs to do the fact checking in the Philippines is very high. Since President Duterte was being elected, he is the one who's also producing this information. If you remember about the drug war, it's also like being what do you call, like shaped by this information. So he's producing numbers and quoting false claims and not facts. So to like bringing the sense that a Philippine is a very urgent need to tackle the drug war, and then it gives him like a justification to kill innocent people on the street. So based on that, the fact-checking outlets was emerged in the country. So they monitor the false claims from different sources. So they use CrowdTangle, for instance. Some also, like monitoring social media, instant messaging. So it's good that WhatsApp now giving the sign forwarded many times if you see. So that's actually one of the clue where you're being alert that this is probably one of the false claims, possible false claim. And from that they do the verification and fact checking, and then they publish the article.
All right, thank you, appreciate it. I guess Lisa Levy first. I think she asked a question. Go ahead, Alyssa.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Khan. I'm really sorry I don't turn on my camera, but my internet has been coming and going. So just to make sure I don't lose signal. Well, first of all, I find your research very, very interested, Ratna. And I also was quite surprised to see that journal articles are not really considered, as a source for fact checking. Do you know why is that? I was surprised to see that was like very low. Thank you.
Can I just respond, Dr. Khan?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, cool. Even though I did my master and I know I'm very familiar with the journal articles, but for us so now I'm dividing my work between like being a full-time journalist and also academic. At my work, journal articles is something like out of my reach. Sometimes it's blocked by the firewall. You need to spend money to get that. Even when I was teaching part-time since 2013. So I'm very privileged to have the access from my university, and also joining a good university in the UK also giving me the access. And now in the at OU, I also like library is one of the it's actually open the possibility to access various types of the journal articles. But for journalists in general, those access are very limited. And also I remember that one of the challenge for me, even for now, is understand what academics say in their journal articles. right? So they use jargons, and the way they write the articles, sometimes it's hard to understand. So that's also one of the obstacles that hindering journalists to use the journal articles as one of their reference. So I think that's one of the, finance and like the knowledge to understand. And remember also bearing in mind that they work in certain times, so you don't have any like luxury to do the fact checking in 7 days, for instance. So they want to do very quick. So I don't think journal articles have the opportunity to give them to be able to verify the information in a very short time. But I believe that journal article is still very important, especially because this is a new area, and in most of the times, journal articles can be the the only one source that journalists can refer to as a source when they try to verify information. And also, I have seen number of the trainings conducted to journalists to be able to understand and trying to bridge the academicians and also journalists were being conducted in several countries in Asia as well. So hopefully it will gain more popularity for the journal articles to being used for the journalists. I hope it answer your question, Elisa, and I will give the email in the chat. Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks. You really did. Thanks a lot.
no
I think
worries.
Laura had a question. Please go ahead, Laura.
Sure, yes, sure. I really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much. Great job. And we're both journalists too. And I just wrote an article last week, actually. It was very strictly fact checked. And I wanted to ask a question about different types of media. And I'm sure you have experienced this too. So like I've worked sometimes in radio or podcasting, and then other times in online, strictly digital writing, like newspaper style writing. And I'm curious, have you noticed a difference there in terms of fact checking? Because I have. And I was curious to hear what you might think about that, and if that might play into your research in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. So I'm not really a broadcaster, and also not like radio and TV, but we have seen a number of broadcaster in Asia. They're also doing the fact checking in the broadcasting. Considering some areas, especially the rural areas in some countries in Asia, they still rely heavily in radio. In the Philippines, radio is also very popular. But unfortunately, there were no outlets joining with the alliance. But yeah, probably it can be also one of the topic that I can digging more in the future. In terms of the debunking, yes, I think the limitation is they cannot, like when it's online media, you can easily walking through the audience from the first time you find the claims, and then what kind of tools that you use. I see several media outlets, big name like BBC, they even when they try to debunk, so this is not about COVID, but about the civil war, and like by the type of the weapon that they use, and the shape of the building behind these attacks. So you've been involved, and you knowing it's kind of like the newsroom opening the doors and being transparent of what the tools that they use. In some cases, they also getting help from the readers, because probably you can use this, or the accent. Oh, this is not like the accent from certain tribes, for instance, in one country. So I think in terms of the difference between the online media with the radio or TV, the limitation of time and also the output can be also affect the way they present the fact checking, especially the steps the journalists do before they can come to the conclusion whether it's false, misleading, or partly false.
I think it's just very interesting to think about that, the differences there. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Any other question? Yes, please go ahead, Ratna.
Yes, thank you, Ranta. This is well done. This is a great work, actually. I would like to report one of the questions I got in the Facebook page. It's from Ika, one of our PhD alumni. Ika, I'm quoting here, said, interesting findings. Why do you think the government is considered more reliable than other sources? for instance, scientists?
Oh, I think also Dr. Khan will also help me because Dr. Khan and Ika also did the research about this, right? Yeah, it's very interesting because like when you see the Philippines, at the same time they are in the both side, right? They produce the disinformation, but also at the same time they were being referred as a source when the journalists wanted to debunk. But I think medical institution is still being considered as one of the reputable sources for the journalists when they try to. I believe probably, but also Dr. Khan can also add or other participants. Because the knowledge of this about the COVID-19 is very limited, and the authority usually are the one who's being like in the front. They are closely in close contact with WHO, for instance. So they are the one who's getting the update from WHO when they update and when they like not changing, but like in adding something about the spread of the virus or development of the like cases in certain areas, or where they say that for instance whether it's airborne or not, people are following that issue as well. So I believe because my assumption, it can be wrong, but probably because the health authorities are the one who's like getting first-hand information from WHO, so that journalists still consider them as a reliable source of the information.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe I can add a few words here. I think that's a very important question that comes up quite a bit in terms of the gap between, there was a research project that I was involved with, and what we found was that there is a real gap between the public and their understanding of science. So the way science is presented could be a range of reasons, could have an impact on people not going directly to scientists for guidance, in especially matters that are very scientific in nature, such as the COVID. And it is based on research in hard science. And it's a tragedy, I think, that is the case, that instead of going to the empirical findings, people are relying on rumors and WhatsApp messages and those sorts of things. So there's a real need to study this in more detail and how science communication can be more effective. I'm sure there are wonderful people who are already doing that, but still there is the gap still remains, and there's, I think, a role of the media as well, the science community in general, in getting together and trying to find solutions for filling that gap. And I think Dr. Maurice, who has joined us today, I think he's doing some work, I believe, in that area as well. So maybe he can enlighten us, but I really appreciate you joining us, Dr. Maurice, today. You're muted, I think.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Ratna, a very interesting presentation. Just now I was thinking about two things related to the government and related to your question about the role of science. To begin with the latter topic, of course, coronavirus being a pandemic, we suffer from the same issues here in the Netherlands about fake news. And the Netherlands is a very free country, but the problem in the Netherlands is that we are very anti-authoritarian. That could lead to distrust of any kind of authority, even academics. And that's right now particularly a problem. What scientists say on TV or in the crisis management team, it's not always taken for granted that people trust that information. Particularly because we have, and this relates to the government opposition question. It's interesting to study the government information provision, but it's also important to look at, I think, opposition parties, because populism is on the rise in the Netherlands, and they question everything what the government says, but they use false information to do that. And they have a quite large following right now. We had last week we had elections, and populist parties are on the rise in the Netherlands. In that respect, I think not only in Asia, not only in the US or South America, but in Western European countries, specifically in the Netherlands, research into fake news and fact checking is very important. So maybe to connect this to Ratna, would that be an option for you to also look into the government, not only looking at the government's role, but also to political parties and their voters?
I think it's also what you mentioned about populism, but it's also very interesting because I have seen the rise of like leaders being populist. That's why I mean, like we were being shocked with what President Duterte did. I mean, like does even until now, but he was being elected and then getting popularity because he was trying to please citizen, especially in the rural areas. And when he was in power, he started to like abusing the power, but he still get people are still love him because not all. I mean, like but because yeah. I think it's also very interesting to see how like this populism affecting the way false information is spreading in that particular country. And then we also know like Brazil as well, right? So not only in Asia, but we also see like increasing typical type of the leaders. Thank you, and also thank you, Dr. Maurice, for his providing us with the link. So Bellingcat is also one of the website that you can refer when you try to finding the way how the fact checkers verify things, and it's very fascinating because they use like crowd information as well from the regular internet users. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
A quick clarification. Ratna, great job with the presentation and your research. I think it's very interesting. But where did you get the origin from? Was it mentioned in the article itself?
Yeah, so the first time I went to the Alliance website, and then so basically the way they do it is when you join with the Alliance as a media outlets, once you publish the article, you need to inform everybody in the on that Alliance that you produce one, and then you give them a link so that they have this database where all members can see and interact. So that's why they can use other, like for instance, if fact checker A is doing the debunking about the claim B, so other outlet also can use. And when they see that the claim spread to their country, they can also use. But not only gathering the data from the Alliance database, I also double check in their own website, because sometimes they don't, probably like they're busy, and also they just forget to update the database. So it's also important to go back to the original source, which is their own website, so that from there, that there are, like if just in case they haven't report the link to the database, so you get the real information, the real article from the media outlet. Am I answering your question, Michelle?
A little. So
okay,
because that's okay, because one of the variables, something that he looked at, was the origin of the claim,
origin.
the
Okay.
misinformation. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Sorry.
I was just taken back to see that like all of Australia's came from social media,
media.
and nothing else. So I'm just
Okay.
wondering where that origin was from. I don't know, it's just too hard to believe. I guess it's just hard to digest that information of all of it coming from social media. Like, do they not do any personal messaging? Yeah, so I'm just wondering where the origin of those claims came from.
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry, I
That's
misled.
okay.
So so when you see the article, the fact-checking articles, they usually mention. So you can find in the body of the article where they get the information. I mean, the false claim. So like the sentence can be like from the Facebook post, for instance, or based on the message circulated in WhatsApp. So from there, you can differentiate the origin of the false claims. But I work with the Australian. I mean, like when I work with IFJ, I work in Jakarta, but the head of the Asia Pacific is located in Sydney. They are not really heavily use the instant messaging. So if I send a WhatsApp, for instance, to my supervisor, she will get back to me like hours. It's totally different with with Indonesians, where they even when they can probably reply even before you send the message. Because they're basically like heavily rely on instant messaging. I know in the Philippines, Fiber is also very popular. I install Fiber when I try to connect with friends in the Philippines, because everybody are on Fiber. Yeah. So probably also because like the amount of the time is very limited, so that also there's probably the claims are not really spreading outside the social media. Let's see what I will find if I extend the time frame. So probably also I can get more origins for the false claims in Australia or other countries which is considered free country. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks for answering that. Yeah, thank you. And good luck as you expand your research, because I think it'll be neat to see with like a longer time period, especially because Jan to April was just getting started, or at least in January. So as the pandemic progressed, how this information would have shaped and changed. Good luck.
Thank you, Michelle.
Well, with this, we want to wrap up our dialogue series session for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating and contributing. And this was a wonderful, exciting session that we had today. Very insightful. So Ratna, we look forward to having you work collaboratively on projects in the Smart Lab. Michelle has already signed up last time. So we'll meet next time, same place, same Zoom link. And in about 2 weeks, right, we'll have one more Smart Dialogue Series presentation for the semester, I think.
Yes.
All right. Take care, stay safe, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.